There's a lot of confusion when it comes down to liver and gallbladder. One of those pieces of confusion is liver stones, flushing liver stones. And I wrote about this a long time ago in Liver Rescue. And what people don't realize is the trend of flushing liver stones and then seeing those liver stones in the toilet isn't what it's cracked up to be. So let's talk about that first. So what is that all about? And then we're going to talk about the gallbladder after that as well. So there was a cleanse, there still is, I'm sure people are still doing it, where you drink a lot of oil. You drink a lot of olive oil. It's part of the cleanse, right? People don't realize when you drink a large amount of oil, it actually congeals and then comes out the other end. You actually poop it out. And when you poop it out, it becomes these little jelly-like round things that end up around your poop or anywhere in there, at the bottom of the toilet, at the top of the toilet. It all depends on how much junk it collected along the way inside the intestinal tract too, just because oil will then wrap around some fecal matter, and then what happens is, boom, it goes out, and there you see it, right? You see the oil with poop mixed in, or you'll see the oil by itself, and you think, oh wow, I got stones coming out, I better keep on guzzling more and more olive oil and then I'll keep on pooping more stones. And what people realize, some people hopefully realize, and I know one person that did this at one time, they realize, how come there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stones? So many stones, it became a pile over time. When you think about it, hundreds each week, hundreds of stones. And they're like, wait a minute, my liver's not even that big. My liver inside my body is not even as big as the pile of stones that accumulated as the last 6 months, 8 months, or a year went by when I was doing the cleanse. And what they finally came to with it when they really added it up was something that I explained to them as well, which was, you were just pooping out the oil. And it was congealing, it was globule, it was collecting all kinds of poop, and then it would come out the other end, right? And so let's talk about this now. Liver stones. The liver has no stones. It doesn't create a stone. It doesn't produce a stone. So there are no liver stones. There were liver stones, would probably be the most popular operation procedure, surgical procedure out there. You'd hear it all the time. Just like when people go in to get their appendix removed, you hear about that all the time. It's very popular. People roll into the hospital and get it removed every day, whether they needed to have it removed or not. A lot of people don't, and they get it removed, and a lot of people do, and they get it removed, right? So what happened, a lot of people with food poisoning go in there and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sick. And they're like, yeah, it's your appendix. And they remove it, okay? It's very common, but it's common and you hear about it. Same thing with tonsils. They get swollen and they'll say, well, you need your tonsils out. It's a popular procedure and you get your tonsils out, okay? So there's other popular procedures too. Gallbladder removal is one of them. It's a popular procedure. You got pain and it's like, let's get your gallbladder out, okay? But there isn't liver stones in your liver, and that's a procedure where they have to cut your liver open every day. People rolling into the hospital every day and they're getting their livers cut open and they're trying to remove stones out of their liver. No, there isn't such thing because the liver doesn't produce any stones. But all this time, and this is how bad trends work, all this time people were getting tricked and they were getting duped about this, okay? Being told that this is the cleanse that flushed your liver stones out, and they were all doing it. And the funny thing is they still are. They really are, okay? And that's what has happened along the way with the misinformation regarding this cleanse and the liver stones. But the funny thing is, it's not funny, it's kind of sad, really, is basically, yeah, they were tricked and the liver doesn't produce stones. So what's going on there? One thing that does happen when you drink a whole bunch of oil down, you have to produce bile. Just like you produce bile for anything you eat, especially when there's fat in your food. The higher the fat in your food, the more bile that gets produced, okay? So if you guzzle a whole bunch of oil, your liver's going to have to then spit out a lot of bile. Not stones, but bile. And that bile goes into the gallbladder, and sometimes if someone has too many gallbladder stones, because yes, gallstones are in the gallbladder, those gallstones might get kicked up and then go into the duct and get clogged. So what I've noticed over the years from liver stone cleanses with the oil is it caused a lot of people to lose their gallbladder. a lot of people. People that you never would have thought would have lost their gallbladder, and they did. Young people losing their gallbladder, all kinds of different people. So that was a mistake by this oil cleanse, for one, right? So let's talk about the gallstone a little bit. The gallstone, right, the gallbladder right here, this is cooler than the liver. So your gallbladder's cooler than the liver. Liver's hotter. All the sludge and the toxic waste that comes from the liver ends up in the bile. And as that toxic waste in the bile goes into the gallbladder and builds up in there, it cools down. It forges a stone over time, or stones over time, right? Or sediment. Either way, that's how it's done. It's gunk that gets spit out of the liver, not stones. No stones coming out of the liver. Junk and garbage and toxins get spit out of the liver right into the gallbladder. The gallbladder is colder. It's actually perched here and cooler than the liver itself, right? So as the contents leave the liver, a hot liver, they end up in the gallbladder and they cool down and they congeal in a different way. They start to form into a stone, hard stone, not jelly globules that are sitting in poop from oil, not oil-based globules. They actually become hard, crusty, really, so hard you can't even break them with a nutcracker if you've ever seen one out of the gallbladder. And so these end up forging, solidifying, and becoming your gallbladder stones, right? And over the years, as you have a toxic liver throughout your life, your liver's spitting up toxins through the bile into your gallbladder, and that becomes sediment. So there's history in there. The history of your life and what you've eaten and the other poisons and toxins you've ingested or gotten into your bloodstream or in your skin or anywhere else, the history of all that ends up in your gallbladder. So it's like historic. It's a historic place that has information. So if that was taken out of your gallbladder, some of that sediment, and they actually analyzed it, science and research doesn't because they won't, right? So if they analyzed it, they would see synthetic chemicals and certain, fillers that are in foods and, certain toxins, nitrates. They would see MSG. They would see all this stuff that's in. They would see metals. They would see all of that. Toxic heavy metals would be in that sediment right there in the gallbladder. And you can see the person's history that way. And you can see it. But the liver flushes by far are the worst. These trendy liver flushes where you're drinking oil and doing other things like that. So let's go into that a little bit more about the liver flush. So here's what's interesting, right? Medical medium information got the word out there that you can't flush stones out of your liver, and what you're seeing is oil in the toilet. And that got out there, okay, through the book, Liver Rescue, and the work I did before the books and stuff. Took time, but eventually enough people learned that that was a farce, right? So then the liver cleanse people decided to kind of say, oh no, we didn't mean liver stones. After all these years, we've been telling you liver stones. We didn't mean liver stones. No, we didn't mean stones from the liver. Oh no, we meant stones from your gallbladder. So our liver flush gets the stones out of your gallbladder. And that's what they say now. So they backtrack. And that's how it all works in alternative medicine. Everybody's just backdating, backtracking, right? And contradicting everything. And that's how it's done out there. Maybe you guys know, and you've learned all this time yourself through your own experiences, right? So, so it's even more ridiculous in a way, because then they're trying to backtrack on that. Okay, so let's go into there a little bit. So with this, is it helpful to drink a bunch of oil, to dump a bunch of oil down your gullet, right, and send it down? It's a bad idea. It's a terrible idea for a lot of reasons, right? And by the way, here's another funny thing I thought I'd mention. So they're saying, okay, it's the gallbladder that's producing all these liver stones. So you mean your little tiny gallbladder. Think about that one, right? Your little tiny gallbladder is producing hundreds of stones. There are people purporting that and taking photos too, and going through their poop, like hundreds of stones and hundreds of stones. And then they're on their third day of the cleanse, another 100 stones down there. Then they do the cleanse a week later, another 500 stones, another 100 stones. if I'm thinking about this correctly, if you're adding up those hundreds of stones and they become 1,000 stones and then they become a few thousand stones, right? So you mean your tiny gallbladder all this time had hundreds and thousands of stones in it? It didn't have hundreds of thousands of stones in there. And that's another funny thing on it all its own. But you find holes in all these different trends that are out there. You can find them just by kind of scratching the surface, right? And you can learn about it that way. So back to the gallbladder a little bit. Gallbladders get infected from bacteria. They get infected from viruses. And they get inflamed. So that's a whole nother thing. And that's a different kind of gallbladder problem, that happens to a lot of people. Also, gallbladders do end up getting heavy from sediment, from tiny, really small sand granules. We're not talking about globules like big stones in the toilet and thousands of them. We're talking about sand. We're talking about grit and sand inside the gallbladder. So they can get heavy with some sand in them. But even that little amount of sand is only just a little amount of sand, okay? Just a little amount of sediment in there, right? It's not piles of sand or piles of globules and piles of stones. It's not any of that at all. So that's important to know right there. Anyway, this concludes this week's video. I can't wait to see you guys next time.